You want to talk about a guy that'll fight you to the end.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what that score is. Max is coming off the ball, and he's going to punch you in the mouth, man.
Yeah,
I love competing against that dude, but you're right. He's unstoppable, man. He's one of the hardest to ever game plan for.
The NFL has a serious Maxx Crosby problem. There's a type of player the NFL cannot manufacture and cannot replace. He doesn't need a guaranteed start. He doesn't need a defense built around him. He doesn't need his name called at the top of the draft. He just needs a fight worth showing up for. And for 7 years, through 4 head coaches, 2 general managers, 1 ownership overhaul, and enough organizational dysfunction to fill a Netflix docuseries, Maxx Crosby has shown up every single time. So let me ask you something. How does a guy who has made 5 straight Pro Bowls, who has been an AP All-Pro 2 times, who has piled up the most tackles for loss of any defensive lineman in the NFL since 2019, how does that player end up in a building where losing doesn't just happen? It festers. The NFL has a serious Maxx Crosby problem.
Maxx Crosby was in Baltimore on Tuesday for a physical. He met with doctors. Doctors took scans. Doctors looked at scans, and based on what they saw, the Ravens did not feel comfortable to pass him on that physical, which nullified the trade.
And if you think this story is just about one player on one franchise, you are missing the entire point. Every few years, the NFL quietly allows something dangerous to happen. A franchise stops chasing wins and starts chasing picks. You know the formula: fire the coach, gut the roster, reset the cap, start the rebuild, and somewhere in the middle of that demolition, if the front office is lucky, an elite, generational defensive player is already on the team, already under contract, already bleeding for a fan base that deserves so much better. That is where the Maxx Crosby problem begins. Since being drafted by the then Oakland Raiders in the 4th round of the 2019 NFL Draft out of Eastern Michigan, Maxx Crosby has built one of the most dominant defensive resumes of his generation.
Since the 2019 season, there's not a player in the NFL that has more quarterback pressures than Maxx Crosby. There isn't a player on the tape that plays harder than Mad Maxx Crosby.
Among all defensive linemen since 2019, first in tackles for loss, 105. Tied 4th in sacks. 4th in QB hits, 144. 5th in QB pressures, 346. 5 consecutive Pro Bowl selections, 2021 to 2025. 69.5 career sacks. He is the Condor. He is Mad Max. He is the guy opponents put 2 and sometimes 3 blockers on, and he still finds a way to blow up the play.
Maxx Crosby is one of 3 or 4 people that ruin games.
And yet, 3 wins in 2025, 4 wins in 2024, 46 wins total across 7 seasons, 1 playoff appearance, a 10-game losing streak in the middle of last season that looked less like football and more like a slow-motion organizational collapse. That's not a down year. That's a culture problem with a name tag on it. Here's what rebuilds demand from players. Patience. Give us time. Trust the process. We're evaluating talent. The young guys need reps. Cap flexibility. Draft capital. The ceiling is high if you just wait. That pitch lands differently when you're a 28-year-old edge rusher whose body is paying rent every Sunday and whose entire legacy is being shaped by a franchise that keeps hitting the reset button. The 2024 Las Vegas Raiders finished 4-13. Their .235 winning percentage was the worst the franchise had posted since 2014. The offense averaged just 18.2 points a game, 29th in the NFL. Head coach Antonio Pierce was fired. 2 days later, so was general manager Tom Telesco. One more reset. And then came the moment that told you everything. The 2025 season, the latest disaster in a long line of disasters. Because what happened in Las Vegas this past season wasn't just a bad year. It was a masterclass in organizational self-destruction, with Maxx Crosby trapped in the middle of every single chapter. Going into 2025, the Raiders had a reason for hope. They missed out on their top coaching target, Ben Johnson, who went to Chicago. So they pivoted to Pete Carroll, the 74-year-old Super Bowl champion, culture builder, and architect of the Seattle Seahawks dynasty. A legend. On paper, it made some sense. Carroll was a proven winner, and the Raiders paired him with splash moves. Offensive coordinator Chip Kelly, the highest-paid OC in the NFL, was brought in to modernize the offense. They traded for 35-year-old Geno Smith to run it. And with the 6th overall pick, they took Ashton Jeanty, the Heisman Trophy runner-up out of Boise State. Win now moves, culture shift, a new era. The Raiders won their season opener at New England. The energy in Allegiant Stadium was electric. Then Week 2 happened. Jim Harbaugh and the Los Angeles Chargers came to town, and what followed was a collapse so complete, so total, so Raiders, that it almost felt scripted. 14 losses over their final 16 games. 9 defeats by double digits. Shut out twice. Geno Smith threw a league-high 17 interceptions. Rookie Ashton Jeanty, the most electric college running back in years, managed just 7 rushing yards on 6 carries in the most-watched regular season game of the year. By November, Carroll had fired 2 of his own coaches mid-season, Chip Kelly and special teams coordinator Tom McMahon, in just 16 days. The coach, who had famously never fired an assistant in Seattle, was burning through staff faster than the Raiders were burning through wins. The final record? 3-14. Dead last in the NFL, worst record Carroll had ever posted as a head coach. And 6 days after the final gun, Pete Carroll was fired. 3-year deal, 1 season. The Raiders have now had 9 different head coaches since 2010. 9. No other franchise in the NFL comes close. After Carroll's firing, GM John Spytek stood at a podium and said the words you've heard in Las Vegas so many times they've lost all meaning. We have to get this right. Here's what makes the 2025 season almost unbearable to watch if you appreciate elite football. While organizational chaos was detonating around him, Maxx Crosby was still playing at an all-pro level on a team that gave him almost nothing to work with. And there is one play that tells you everything. Week 11, Monday Night Football. The Dallas Cowboys, fresh off their bye, fighting for a playoff spot, come to Allegiant Stadium. The Raiders are 2-8. The season is over. The building has that quiet that only losing franchises know. But nobody told Maxx Crosby. First quarter. Dak Prescott, Pro Bowl quarterback, clean pocket, loaded receiving core, takes the snap. He's comfortable. He's looking downfield. And then Crosby erupts off the edge with pure, suffocating bull rush power and closes on Prescott in under 2 seconds. He doesn't just sack him. He strips the ball from his hands. Rookie defensive tackle Tonka Hemingway falls on it. Raiders ball in Prescott's own territory. 35-yard field goal. 3-0 Raiders. NFL.com called it a can't-miss play, because it was. The Raiders went on to lose that game 33-16. Of course they did. But after the game, while reporters surrounded Carroll asking what went wrong, Crosby sat at his locker and said this.
We aren't good enough right now. You know what I mean? There's a lot of issues, and you got to find ways to get better, find solutions instead of just doing the same thing and expecting a different result.
No excuses, no trade demands, just accountability from a player who had every right to walk away but refused to. That is who Maxx Crosby is. Here's what that Monday Night Football game illustrates that goes beyond one player and one franchise. The NFL says it hates tanking, yet the system pays you to be terrible. Go 3-14, and you don't just lose games, you gain a top draft pick, you gain cap space, you gain a media narrative about the rebuild, and maybe, just maybe, if you bottom out hard enough, you land a franchise quarterback. And the fear that this math leads somewhere darker? That's not a conspiracy theory. There's documented evidence. In 2022, former Miami Dolphins head coach Brian Flores alleged in a lawsuit that owner Stephen Ross had offered him $100,000 for every loss during the 2019 season to secure a higher draft position. Ross denied it. The NFL investigated, and what it confirmed was a separate set of violations. Tampering infractions involving the improper pursuit of Tom Brady and Sean Payton, deemed by Commissioner Goodell to be of unprecedented scope and severity. Ross was suspended. The Dolphins forfeited draft picks. As for the tanking allegation itself, the investigation found insufficient evidence.
You have a situation now where Brian Flores claims that he was an outcast in his own organization for not losing enough games, and then over the next 2 years, when he posted the franchise's first back-to-back winning seasons in 18 years, he was fired.
But here's the point. A head coach swore under oath that his owner paid him to lose. The word tank is now permanent NFL vocabulary. That alone tells you the incentives are broken. The NFL punishes mediocrity, but it rewards catastrophe. And caught in the middle of that math is every elite player watching his prime years disappear while the front office evaluates. The locker room horror movie. There are 3 stages to losing culture, and the Raiders have cycled through all 3, repeatedly, almost rhythmically, for 2 decades. Stage 1 is hope. New coach, new scheme. We're closer than people think. Stage 2 is excuses, injuries, youth. We're evaluating the roster. The word process gets used in press conferences a lot. Stage 3 is acceptance, and that's the one that kills franchises. That's when guys stop fighting through pain on 3rd and 1. When the standard in the building slowly, invisibly drops. Not because anyone decided it should, but because losing long enough teaches people that losing is the norm. NFL careers are short, brutally short. A player like Maxx Crosby gets maybe 2 or 3 real chances at a Super Bowl window. You can't donate your prime to an experiment and get those years back. A losing franchise doesn't just lose games, it loses standards. And once those are gone, no draft pick, not even the number 1 overall, can fix what the culture broke. Here's the other thing the NFL is going to have to reckon with. We are in the era of the player escape plan. Jalen Ramsey forced his way out of Jacksonville. Devontae Adams requested a trade from Green Bay. Khalil Mack was shipped out of Oakland. Every time, elite player, dysfunctional environment, and a career clock ticking louder than the organization's willingness to win. Nobody called those players disloyal. They were protecting their legacies. They were doing the math. And now Maxx Crosby, a guy who just signed a 3-year, $106.5 million extension with $91.5 million guaranteed in March 2025. A deal that made him the highest-paid non-quarterback in the NFL at the time, was staring down that same math. You heard that right. The Raiders paid him like a cornerstone, and the cornerstone is cracking. Because here's what finally broke it. When the Raiders shut Crosby down for the final 2 games to protect the number 1 draft pick, Crosby didn't quietly accept it. He stormed out of the facility. He was physically capable of playing. This franchise was deliberately choosing not to compete. For a player whose entire identity is built on showing up, fighting through pain, refusing to quit, being told to sit down so the team could finish last, was a betrayal he couldn't stomach. The moment the Raiders made it clear that draft positioning could matter more than winning, Crosby lost something he can't get back: trust. Multiple NFL insiders, Jay Glazer, Diana Russini of The Athletic, and others, reported in the weeks leading up to the 2026 NFL offseason that a trade was imminent. The Raiders' asking price, 2 first-round picks. The Cowboys, Bears, Ravens, Bills, and Patriots were all circling. The Athletic's Michael Silver wrote that Crosby was at his limit, that he'd had, quote, a new boss every 12 seconds, with 1 winning season out of 7 to show for it. If a franchise can't keep the player they just paid like a franchise cornerstone.
And if I'm the Ravens, I want to know, before I buy this player, I want to know what it's going to cost me. I don't want to find out later that there's some hidden cost I wasn't aware of, that all of a sudden he's upset with his contract.
What does that tell you about the building? Breaking, March 7th, 2026.
Some late Friday night breaking news here on SportsCenter. The Baltimore Ravens are sending their 2026 and 2027 first-round picks to the Las Vegas Raiders in exchange for 5-time Pro Bowl defensive end Maxx Crosby.
Now we know. ESPN's Adam Schefter confirmed Friday night the Raiders traded Maxx Crosby to the Baltimore Ravens for Baltimore's 2026 first-round pick, number 14 overall, and their 2027 first. The first time in the Ravens' 31-year franchise history they traded a first-round pick for a veteran player. The Cowboys offered a first and a second. Baltimore topped them. ESPN's Jamison Hensley. Baltimore acquires Crosby after a season in which it recorded its fewest sacks in 15 years. Adam Schefter. His production and loyalty were rarely rewarded. His relationship with the Raiders had run its course.
A dramatic turn of events for the Baltimore Ravens and Las Vegas Raiders on their blockbuster trade. The Raiders have announced that the Ravens nullified the trade of Maxx Crosby for 2 first-round picks. Now,
well, this is about a medical issue, Greeny, and this is about how different sides interpret the condition of Maxx Crosby's knee, which underwent surgery 8 weeks ago.
You look at the biggest trades in NFL history, and this would qualify being that I think there were 15 trades made that involved at least 2 first-round draft picks, this being one. None of them ever was voided or nullified due to a physical that did not work out in the opinion of one team.
And here is where the Maxx Crosby problem stops being a Raiders story and becomes a league-wide problem. When tanking becomes normalized, elite competitors become tradable commodities. Stars won't suffer quietly in the rebuild economy anymore. They're too informed. They have too much leverage. But here's the brutal paradox that losing franchises keep missing. High draft picks don't fix culture. Culture is what develops high draft picks. You can land a franchise quarterback in April, but if the locker room has already learned how to lose, if the standard has eroded, if the leaders have checked out, that rookie is going to spend his first 3 years just trying to survive the environment. The Raiders have the first overall pick in the 2026 draft and are widely expected to select quarterback Fernando Mendoza. But if the franchise trades away the one player who has set the standard for elite in that building for 7 years, the one player opponents have actually feared, what exactly does that rookie quarterback inherit? So how does the NFL fix this? Reward late-season wins with comp pick bonuses. Make competitive finishes mean something even in a lost year. Expand the draft lottery so catastrophic records don't guarantee the top pick. Build cap incentives for year-over-year improvement, not just raw records. But right now, the NFL is teaching franchises the exact same lesson year after year. If you're not good, be catastrophic. And the players, the ones who actually make this league worth watching, are the ones paying for that lesson with their careers. 7 seasons, 4 head coaches, 1 winning year, 1 playoff appearance. And through every single reset, every press conference, every "we're heading in the right direction" speech, Maxx Crosby showed up. He strip-sacked Dak Prescott on national television on a 2-8 team that was already drafting quarterbacks in its sleep. He played through ankle surgery, knee procedures, and a losing culture that would have broken lesser men years ago. The NFL doesn't have a Maxx Crosby problem because Crosby failed. It has a Maxx Crosby problem because he succeeded in a system that keeps wasting him. And more stars are going to face this exact moment. The question isn't whether it happens again. The question is, does the league fix the system before the next Maxx Crosby runs out of time? If you believe elite players deserve better than this, drop it in the comments. Subscribe to End Zone Exposed so you never miss the stories the mainstream is too afraid to tell. Like this video and share it with every football fan who knows the game deserves better. End Zone Exposed, where the truth always scores.